Welcome back, everyone. It is 10 minutes past the hour. I will stop sharing my screen and we will go into the next sessions. Very exciting sessions. The next 3 sessions before our next break, we've got an update on the Women in FinTech Hackathon and the summit from the High People folks. That's Innocent Kawoya, John Mark Sebunya, Nicholas Kalungi, and Damali Sali. And then we've got Paul and Steve talking about the MFI and MFI institutions and Moja Loop, lessons from Myanmar. And then we have an update from Mawali. So kicking us off this, well, it's afternoon my time, but 12 p.m. UTC, is Innocent and his team. So Innocent, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you, Simeon.
Excellent.
Good morning, good afternoon, and if it is evening anywhere, I greet you with love from High People. I'm excited to be here. I'm very excited for the progress that is happening around the Moja Loop community. For many reasons, Level 1 project and Moja Loop Foundation is playing a very important role in helping very many people in Africa, especially in my land in Uganda, adapt to financial inclusion. I'll be joined by Damali Sali and John Mark from MTN will be helping in some bits of my presentation. He was a facilitator, mentor, and judge, played a number of roles at the Women in FinTech Hackathon. So I'll start by sharing my very long presentation. I hope it will not bore anybody. And yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Innocent.
Okay, thank you. I'll start my brief. I know I have talked about High People in this community every time, but High People is a brand that is 15 years now, and we're keen to promote secure digital financial services because of their vital role in promoting financial inclusion. We deal with fintechs, with women in technology, with developers, with mobile network operators, with banks, with BFSPs, with regulators, policymakers, government, and many others in matters that regard to financial inclusion and digital inclusion. In the end, broadly speaking, to digital transformation, we hold a number of events. Part of the reason why we run these events is to advocate for adoption of financial services. In that sense, secure digital financial services. We have so far run 4 events this year. The first one was a 40 Days for the FinTechs initiative, in which we featured 41 companies that are FinTechs. We had the FinTech exhibition. The Women in November, in the week of 26th, we shall be running the 7th edition of the Include Everyone Summit, or what we call the Digital and Financial Inclusion Summit, and the 7th edition of the Digital Impact Awards Africa. We did run a very successful Women in FinTech initiative. It was inaugural on our side, and it was very amazing because we expected to make good or fail at the same time, because we hadn't run something as unique as this for the many years we've been operating. But we're glad that where we planned to have 12 teams participating, we had 15. So that percentage should be about 130%. We had 6 days of very amazing interaction with different women-led teams, majority of which were only women-made. And we had a lot of discussions around Level 1 project and around open source software for financial inclusion and many other things. We had different facilitators and support from ID8, from Mothersbox, from Cross-Lake Technologies, from High People, of course, from many other stakeholders. The fact that this slide is somewhere and can be accessed. I will skip a few bits of the things that happened. But those are a few details of how successful TV showcasing their innovations and the many things they're able to do, especially in this COVID time. This slide talks about a few statistics that are very important and that we should talk about. It's very factual that women are financially excluded. Women one page any single day, such as circles. At the recently concluded 40 days for the fintechs, we had a participation of 10% women-led teams out of the 41 teams that participated. And it is also factual that in Uganda and some other parts of East Africa, 40% of small and medium-sized businesses are owned by women. We had some great feedback coming from the participating 15 teams and the many other women that participated in the Women in FinTech Summit about Moja Loop. And as you may see on your screens, about 46% say they were excited to have an open source software for interoperability. About 55% said Moja Loop will help them develop interoperable payment solutions easily. 75% were very excited and thankful and eager to see what they can be able to do. About 86%, majority of whom were part of the hackathon, said they have started implementing something that can leverage Moja Loop to better serve their targeted customers. And 26% were eager to contribute to code and support the community. We had of government and other stakeholders and had the Minister of ICT commending the Women in FinTech initiative. She was the same person that was our chief guest at 40 Days for the FinTechs. And we also had participants that even never thought they would have a chance to be a part of such an amazing initiative, taking part. There are a number of challenges that are challenging, that are still at the heads of FinTechs around Africa. Some of which I'll highlight here. Of course, there is still a lot of mistrust. We're still having challenges of fraud, and we're making sure we play our role of sensitizing everyone to understand how fraud happens and working on all possible ways to make sure it doesn't happen every other time. There's still lack of facilities like reliable data centers. There is still issues of women-led fintechs being typical startups with limited capital. There are challenges of taxation that limit innovation especially in the mobile money space. There is still lack of financing and capital, and regulation is still an issue for different players. But of course, even when there are these kind of challenges, the opportunities for our side as high people are actually more exciting. One, we're very sure we have resources like the level 1 projects, courseware, and many other resources that we're able to use. I mean, even when we had the hackathon for 6 days and trying to do a lot of sensitization, we didn't even cover even 10% of what the resources that are available by level 1 are for people to actually learn and be able to leverage, and yet they learned a lot based on their feedback. There is still a lot that we can innovate in our space because not much has been done, much has achieved a lot of success in the space. There is growing demand for mobile banking services, and that plays very well for mobile money and other mobile financial services. The merchant space is opening closely, and we are eagerly working to make sure we contribute to making sure that out of the 16 million small businesses in East Africa, by the end of 4 years to come, each one of them has received their first digital payment. There is a growing opportunity because of the fact that many people are working from home because of what we all know as the COVID challenges. So there is a great demand of these services. Of course, I would say there are opportunities that there are players like High People, like Mojalu Foundation, and many others that are playing to make sure they help the ecosystem adapt to the development of interoperable payment solutions. And of course, we have open source software, Mojalu, which is an opportunity for very many. And lastly, there is a very large pool of very, very talented and passionate women professionals. We didn't know about that until when we had the successful Women in FinTech initiative. I'll take back to this study I pulled that we had to run earlier this year around the community, and it's been very important for us to reference every time because it was a very important guideline for us to actually say we really should be able to run Women in FinTech Hackathon, because even when most of the respondents were men, they believe that it is important to prioritize development and design of FinTech solutions for women. So that poll will be something that I always reference for a number of years. I'll take you deep into the Women in FinTech initiative. That's just a photo of part of the activities that happened. And these are a number of the members that were. I know the photo is not inclusive of everyone, but at least I think it includes about 70 or 75% of the participants that were. We had a number of players in the space participating, some virtually, others physically. Motorsport supported us in a very, very amazing way, technically, providing the lab environment and providing 8 mentors that supported throughout the days. We had great usage of ID8 space to coordinate our virtual experience of the hackathon. Mojalu Foundation that also had to offer us a speaker, Adama from Google, Google's next billion project, Pegasus, Bionic, that are fintechs in Uganda, Yo Uganda. We had an e-keynote speech from the CEO of Women in Payments, Christy Duncan. We had Kanzuko, that is also fintech, MTN, that is a big player in the mobile financial space in Africa, CBA, who's one of the board members, was actually chief mentor for the hackathon, and Crosslink Technologies. And this slide is just a brief about the amazing women that played a very important role in seeing the success of this event. I am happy that Damali will be coming in later in time today to share her own experience of what she saw. But this is what we have here, as you may see, a number of very great women, and yeah. And we also did our part doing the mentorship, facilitation, and judging at the end. So how was the FinTech Women in FinTech Hackathon executed? I don't know that John Mark is here. Maybe you could go through the next slides. Hello, John Mark?
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. Can you hear me, Innocent?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Before I can dive into the execution, I would want to pass a vote of thanks to the teams that have made this possible. Very specifically, I want to pass a vote of thanks to Mila for believing in this project. The level 1 project, the foundation, the partners, Motorsport, ID8, Crosslink, and everyone that participated in making this happen. The execution, I think, Innocent, you've touched on it. There were 15 teams. They were women-led. My remembrance is that at least 2 of the members were supposed to be female. Then the levels, most of the teams were university degree holders, with a few that were of secondary school. Then one important thing that came out from the results and the execution was the enlightenment on level 1 project principles and the use of Mojalu. When we go to the next slide, you will be able to see the execution program. So these were the teams that did participate. 15 teams. Now, the execution program, one important thing I might want to say about this is that when you organize hackathons, many times there is a theme under which the hackathon is being run. The first hackathon that we did hold, I think that was the last year, was big, but wasn't as big as this in the execution. So this execution had in the program themes to do with training on technology tools that the teams would work with. There were themes to do with mentorship, whereby we had the leaders from different domains of business that came in every day to mentor the teams on business ideation, on finance, on technology, on marketing, and different topics. Importantly, we deliberately put in a session that was focused on level 1 project principles. This was running every day. So each of the days we could discuss with the teams level 1 project principles. One day it was end user experience. Another day it was system design. The other day it was scheme rules, government support. So we could discuss with the teams level 1 project principles and how they apply to their different projects and innovations. Then we had a session that was facilitated by our partners, Modules. This was a modular loop deep dive. The team set up a lab, particularly for this hackathon. Then we were able to go through every day with the teams on call. We were able to run through how they use modular loop, how they test with the lab setting. So the tasks that the teams had were broken down into 7, having a problem statement, business case, a solution proposal, doing a prototype, then solution design, and then data models, and then interoperability, making sure that whatever they were going to do had an interoperability element. But specifically, the focus here was on how their solution make use of modular from an interoperability perspective. Go to the next slide. So the teams were able to use a very wide range of tools for ideation. This slide shows what they were doing with the mind map, what they were doing with modeling. And then each of the days, the team had an activity that they were supposed to accomplish. Like on day 1, it was working on problem statement and business case. So at the end of the day, the team had to make a presentation on a problem statement and a business case. On the following day, they had to work on a solution. So after working on their problem and business case, then they work on what's the solution they're going to deploy. Then the tasks that the teams were still going through here included prototyping. In prototyping, this required them to use different tools. For instance, they had to go through working on prototypes for the app and the USSD. One thing that came in importantly here is that when the teams were prototyping, there were elements of what do they do particularly to achieve access for many users. Now, things like in our market, like USSD is a very important channel. The app is an important channel, but it's still on the lower usage. So the teams were challenged on how they make use of tools like for USSD, specifically to address more inclusion. Then they had to do flow diagrams. There is an example of a flow diagram on the technologies used. There is an example of a flow diagram that the teams were able to do. And then this was showing how they make use of modular loop in their flow diagrams. Then they did have to make what you call data models. Data models, in very simple terms, show how their solution, what kind of data it captures it, how they are storing it. Then in testing, they had to test with different tools. Postman is very common for many people that are using APIs. But importantly, in this particular case, the teams were testing with the lab setting that Modules had put up. So they were given endpoints. Each team had an endpoint to where they could call and then run their use case. The use case could have been P2P, could have been a merchant payment, could have been bulk payments. There were cases for bulk payment that had to be done, and then the teams had to work around the lab settings and then achieve bulk payments. Then we also did have, I mentioned earlier that during the engagements, level 1 project principles were key. At the end of the day, we were tasking the teams to try and elaborate how their solution, from a system design perspective, which level 1 principles does it use, from an end user design perspective, from governance, how they think about their solution as far as level 1 is concerned. We had some sessions just to discuss what you call government support, not necessarily that the teams in this case had to do anything for government support, but it's more for enlightening them to be like, when they have engagements with different players in the ecosystem, whether it's banks, whether it's telcos, whether it's the government regulators, they can be able to voice out some of the needs that make interoperability, that make inclusion much more smoother if the government came in to support. Then we did have, of course, the tasks. I've talked about interoperability with Mojarup, which the teams were testing with. The important thing that I would want to mention here is that in all of this, while we had teams physically sitting together, there was a lot of use of digital tools. ID8 was being used. Every day the teams would submit what was the result of their work, the task for the day. Zoom, which we are using even now, it was very helpful in the sessions that we had with our mentors, Modus Box that was offline. We had Slack, which also came in handy. The teams were using quite a lot of digital tools for the collaboration. Now, at the end of the day, after the 5 days, all the teams had to submit a detailed case of their work. We had the jury of 4, part of which was our partners from Modus Box. Now, importantly here, what I might want to mention out is that when you look at what the teams were doing, it was a whole range of use cases. Some use cases were payments-centric. Others were more around circles, savings and lending. Then other use cases were focusing on solutions for agriculture. Some circles solutions were typically for women. Some were other e-commerce kind of solutions. Now, all of them were very good in their own merit because they were addressing different society needs. What becomes very important for us from a Mojarup perspective is that we need to have a view of what the outside world there that is developing solutions, how they can effectively find value in using Mojarup. So in this case, the teams were tasked to use Mojarup the way we have it as of now. But as part of product evolution, we should be thinking more around if someone is doing savings and lending, a circle, what do we do better with Mojarup for them to have more value from it? If someone is doing e-commerce, of course, we are doing merchant payments in Mojarup, but what do we do better for e-commerce players to have more value in the use of Mojarup? So at the end of the day, the assessments looked at the problem statement, business case, the solution proposal, the prototypes, and I would want to highlight that part of the assessment was specific around how the team uses level 1 principles, then how they've adopted Mojarup. So that was a very big part of the assessment value. Then the other element was the go-to-market, how ready is the product to go to market. And on top of that, we had the female impact. We did task the teams that for whatever they were trying to do, they should also be able to elaborate how their products, how their solutions are going to be of more value to for female inclusion. Then we did get the teams to do a survey post the exercise to highlight what were their main learnings. Two main learnings from the engagement. They did provide 4 highlights, I would say. The mentorship sessions were very good. They did learn a lot about software and technologies, new software, the API training with Mojaloop, and of course, they liked the networking. Then their major learnings from the sessions, they highlighted 2, which was the level 1 principles, and then the Mojaloop. These were like the top 2 learnings from the teams. Then in general, the general feedback was the hackathon was excellently executed, and they're looking forward to more engagements of the kind in the market. Not necessarily the same teams, but they would be looking out for more engagement in the market. And then the way forward that we envision, Innocent, you may talk more about this. From the hackathon, we did realize the strong motivation that we have to take this to a next level. How do we get these teams into what we would call an incubator? How do we then go to market for some of their products? And later, if someone is on the market, then we could be able to move them into an accelerator program. This is what we visualize as the next steps. Innocent, over to you.
We did culminate the Women in FinTech initiative of 2020 into a summit that we call the Women in FinTech Summit. And before I asked Damali to join, a few
Hey, Innocent, if you can hear us, we're having a bit of a trouble hearing you.
Moments from one of the panel discussions of the FinTech Summit. Hi, Damali, are you here?
Hi, Innocent. I can hear you very well. How are you?
Hey, Simeon. I'm fine, thank you. I'm happy you're here finally. Simeon, can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, Damali.
Okay, thank you.
Innocent, thank you so much. Maybe you can move to the 3rd slide as I start, to the next slide. But maybe before I do start, I would like to particularly thank Mojaloop Foundation for partnering with High People to have this Women in FinTech hackathon. Speaking as a woman who is Ugandan, who is working in this environment, I know for a fact that we are, ambitious, we're ingenious, we're intelligent, we're very entrepreneurial as Ugandan women. However, oftentimes we are constrained by the environment in which we are working in. In fact, a lot of studies have shown, data has been collected showing the gender disparity in every sector of the economy, every sector of the environment in Uganda. And this information is usually collected year on year. People talk about the disparity, how the figures are not good, but nothing is done about it. We keep talking about the same statistic every year about how women are not financially included, how women are disproportionately represented in different sectors, but there's nothing done. And it's usually a frustration of mine. So I remember attending the 40 days, 40 FinTechs panel session. And one of the statistics that High People gave out at that time was that only 10% of the 41 FinTechs were either led or founded by women. And I listened to that again. I was like, okay, that's not good. But then to my surprise, I was then later on informed that actually High People is going to do the Women in FinTech. So that's when I realized that, wow, I'm glad that High People and its partners are putting their money where their mouth is. They found these statistics, only 10%, and they're trying to do something about it, something really practical. And in a way, that's why I wanted to start with this, thanking High People and its partners for putting their money where their mouth is and to really do something for women to improve that particular statistic. Clearly, women making up 51% of the Ugandan population, and yet only 23% of them are using informal services. And internet access in Uganda is just about 37%, and it's mostly in urban centers. And yet the people who are at the greatest need, the people at the bottom of the pyramid, are mostly in rural areas of Uganda. I'm a trade expert, and I know that 70% of the people involved in informal trade are women, and mostly women and youth. They contribute to a big chunk of Uganda's trade contribution. In fact, Uganda has a trade surplus in informal trade. We export more to our neighbors through informal trade than we do import. So, and the women are therefore contributing to this particular great statistic. However, there are no financial solutions or that are clearly targeting those women and their challenges or address those particular challenges. And I mean, this I've talked about it before, where I mentioned Uganda, we are very entrepreneurial as women. 48% of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in Uganda actually by women, which is one of the highest in the world. And yet, here we are, we have this statistic also where we have financial inclusion being, disproportionately affecting women. So I thought that the fact that high people could actually take a stand and take action to improve these statistics was actually quite commendable. So I was very happy to actually participate in the Women in FinTech Hackathon. Innocent, if you can go to the next slide. Yes, I wanted to mostly talk about the impact that I saw, because I was a mentor. I met these ladies, over, one afternoon. I talked to them, then they followed me later, and they kept, they called me after some time. And one of the key things that I realized that they kept talking to me about was that they appreciated the practical application of the level 1 principles, which I didn't know about before, me attending the hackathon. But they got to understand that them developing solutions that are cheaper, accessible, and affordable is important for our context, because people don't have smartphones, the users don't have smartphones, and therefore you developing an application that requires someone to download an application on their smartphone is something that is just won't be accessible, it won't be affordable. So they seem to continuously, several of them, when I asked, so what did you learn the most in this hackathon? What was the main thing? They mentioned the fact that the level 1 principles was a key factor for them to know how to design their next projects. Then they also appreciated the mentorship sessions. Most of you obviously are not in our context, but access to information and knowledge is a key thing. We have a huge information asymmetry between women and men in Uganda, and access to information is one of those things that either keeps women back or takes them ahead. And a lot of them were very interested in the product development, the branding, the marketing. I talked about financial management, and they hadn't thought about these facts that you need to actually manage your finances. In Uganda, we don't have a lot of people in Uganda who are MSMEs or developing products. They usually get their capital from family and friends. Those are the only two main sources of capital that you kind of get. And unfortunately, a lot of people also don't have very rich families. So them understanding how you can attract investment through different other means was also a key session that they seem to have appreciated. The third one that they appreciated the most was on the fact that they got a space, because high people got them a space where they could come together and co-create and ideate and develop a product. Now, this may be taken lightly by other environments, but in Uganda, it's key, because for them, they have to choose between that day, either making money for rent and food or going in a space to sit down and co-create. So High People was providing them a space where they had food, they had internet, they got the knowledge, but then they were also facilitating them, so they weren't losing out. If they had to choose between coming to the iPeople hackathon or them earning money for rent and food, they would have gone for the rent and food, and therefore they wouldn't have been able to co-create. So this provision of a space to co-create and ideate and develop was highly appreciated. Obviously, it was short, it was just a week, but it was still better than nothing, because before High People, no one had done anything anyway. So it was highly appreciated. And then they also appreciated the opportunity to have visibility and branding. A lot of them were just developing the products, and they could see that people are talking about them online, people are talking about them, about their products. Some of them were getting contacts of people asking them, so what exactly is your product about? So they seemed to like that visibility that they were getting before they even had a finished product. And they seemed to appreciate those particular opportunities that they were getting, and the visibility, because it's very expensive to actually get visibility in Uganda. So they were appreciating all those benefits that they got out of that week's of a hackathon. So if we can go to the next slide. I just do have a few recommendations, and these are general. I don't want to lump it all on High People. High People has already done a lot in even at least trying to address the challenge. But we still have, as a country, I feel, we still have quite a lot to do in trying to see that women in fintech can move from the current 10% to 50%. We are even more than the men in Uganda, actually. So representation to up to 50%. So one of the things that has to happen is that these women in these hackathons have to happen a whole lot more regularly, so that we have a pipeline of solutions that are based on level 1 principles, based on the context that we have, based on the people who suffer these things. Because when women are involved in the design and conceptualization of products, of solutions, it means they address those women's solutions. Actually, that's why you see a lot of the products that were developed in the hackathon were challenges that actually affect women. We had the circles. I think two of the teams were doing circles. This is where women mostly get their credit, because as women in Uganda, it's hard for us to get loans from banks because the banks ask for collateral. We're in a paternal society. Most women do not have land titles. So most women do not have assets. So you can't take it to the bank, which means you can never get credit, however wonderful a product you may have. You can never get access to that. So we need to do these hackathons more frequently so that we can open the minds up on other potential sources of investment or of capital, of venture capital, angel investors, and just to see, we can give them the women that visibility much more regularly so that these products that are in the pipeline can actually get to the market. The other product that I thought was key, I think there were two of them that were developing agri-processing or agri-value chain type solutions. Uganda, the backbone of our economy is literally agriculture. Unfortunately, women in Uganda, in this backbone of agriculture, we are always at the bottom of the value chain. We're in gardens producing the stuff. And then when it gets to selling the product, it's then given to the men in the value chain. So if we develop these solutions that can enable that woman on her farm to grow the tomatoes and sell them without needing a middleman, those products will help us. But those products will never come to the market if the women who develop them, who can conceptualize them for that solution, do not have the financing to actually do them, do not have the incubators for them to develop those things, do not have the basic principles to design those particular products. So and then also we need to do them much more regionally. This hackathon was based in Kampala. Kampala is a metropole, it's a highly, maybe richer, more access women, but the women in the different regions of the country also have solutions that they need to give. They also have ideas about what they need to do. So these also have to be, segmented, regionally. They have to move into the region. But also the biggest problem actually is access to finance. I did a simple survey when I went to mentor them on financial management and sourcing of finance, and almost all the teams didn't have any financial management or financial expert on their teams. All the teams, when I asked them, said the capital that they were using or even intended to use was going to be coming from family and friends. I know that we don't have a lot of rich families in Uganda, so it means that capital is limited. It means those products will never get to market. So they need to have training and visibility and a fund. I wish we had, as a country, I wish we had a fund that, unfortunately, we also don't have a culture of angel investors. We don't have a culture of venture capital, but I wish we had a fund that can actually capitalize or accelerate these solutions that have an impact on the people at the bottom of the pyramid, have an impact on financial inclusion, have an impact on women inclusion. I wish we had a fund that can actually push them out there to help them go to the market. With that, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I had to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Damali. As we conclude, I think we still have 1 or 2 minutes. We'll be having. Hi, everyone. Hi, Simeon.
Hi, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. So thank you so much, Damali and John Mark. We'll be heading for our next event on the year calendar. That is the Digital and Financial Inclusion Summit, running with hashtags Include Everyone and hashtag Level 1 Project, and the 7th edition of the Digital Impact Awards Africa. I'll ask maybe today or tomorrow if this poll will be ran somehow. The Digital Impact Awards Africa will be happening, like I mentioned. I wish to take this opportunity to thank our partners that are supporting the different initiatives: Motorspokes, Ideate, Moja Foundation, Crosslake Technologies, and the other stakeholders. I'm also thankful to God for the many good things that happen, and very thankful to our sponsors, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And also a big thank you for the mentorship and the resource support from Mila. He's always supporting to help us understand, recommending us to information resources, and making sure we are working on top of the world and making sure things happen in the way how other people in the world are doing. So we're very thankful to you, Mina. I know I am able to send you a message and thank you, but I wish to thank you as well and this community. And we're thankful to the foundation for the support. We invite all stakeholders and all partners of the Moja Foundation to join us on the different activities and events that we run. They are, in many senses, they are free for partnership of many members of the Moja Foundation. So please, if you can add some knowledge resource, if you can add some contacts and many other things that we need to make sure we reach out to many other stakeholders, especially in the financial space in Africa. We welcome all that support. And thank you everyone for making time to follow through this 40 minutes presentation and report. May God bless you and may you enjoy the rest of the 12 Moja Loop convening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Innocent, Damali, and John Mark. We appreciate those updates on the Women in FinTech Hackathon, the summit, and the lessons from it.